We live in a day in which millions, I mean literally millions, are walking away from faith. Not just church, but from faith itself. There's something in the way we do life here in America, something in this world that is eroding our faith. There's this constant, subtle pull that pulls us towards a culture where there's like no language for faith. There's no space for someone greater than us. There's just no room for Jesus. It's like standing on the beach when the tide's rolling out and you can feel the sand getting pulled out from under your feet. It feels inevitable. It feels unstoppable. It can feel hopeless. But history tells us a different story. It shows us another way. So in the 1930s, Dietrich Bonhoeffer was a pastor. He was this rising intellectual in Germany, and many suggested that he was on track to become the greatest theologian of the 20th century, but the Nazis came to power, and they demanded that all good Germans would obey them, follow them, become part of the Nazi way of life, and they sent their children to Nazi youth camps, and they instructed all their churches to teach Nazi doctrine, and millions upon millions of Germans just followed along. Millions upon millions of Christians just followed along. But not Bonhoeffer. He started a resistance, not a military resistance, but a community that sought to resist the Nazis by practicing the way of Jesus. They sought to live their lives not shaped by the Nazi party, but shaped by practicing daily prayer, reading of scripture, serving one another, confession, acts of radical kindness. Now, some of Bonhoeffer's friends in the city, they heard about what he was doing. He went off and formed what sounded like this commune. It sounded cult-like, it sounded crazy or extreme. And at the time, they had no idea what Hitler was planning on doing. They had no idea the scope of it, so Bonhoeffer's response seemed an overreaction. So one of his friends came from the city out to see him to say, "Hey, what are you doing out here? You sound crazy. Everyone thinks you've gone extreme." And Bonhoeffer, rather than defend himself, says, "Let's go on a boat trip." So they hop in the lake and they go rowing across the lake, and they come to this little hill on the other side of the shore, and they walk up to the top of the hill, and then they stop. And Bonhoeffer points out at this field teeming with thousands upon thousands, all doing these training exercises, practicing these military routines and going through these patterns. It was a Nazi youth camp. And that's when Bonhoeffer broke the silence and said to him, "What we are doing must be stronger than what they are doing." I want to invite you to join us as we explore, what does it look like for us in our day to form a resistance against the erosion of faith, to stand against this tide that is pulling us out, this tide of culture and politics and technology. What does it look like to have a faith that is stronger than our culture? Using the book of Daniel as a guide, we're going to explore how the people of God down through the ages have formed communities of resistance, communities that are not conformed to the world, but transformed by a simple, powerful way of life, following God through the scriptures. We're going to see how believers across the ages have found ways to thrive in an educational system apart from God, to bless people they deeply disagree with, to be on the right side of history when no one else sees it that way, to make the tough choice to break with party lines and refuse to bend the knee. We're going to see how they have stood and learned to be in the world, to love this busy world, this world that God created, but not be of the world. It's a 2,500-year-old story, and it's a story that we desperately need to hear, and it's a story that we need to learn how to live into.